Zyx'nax couldn't believe his luck. Or rather, his spectacular lack thereof. Of all the exchange programs in all the galaxies, he just had to end up on Earth at Class 13 Deathworld, the kind of planet that made seasoned space travelers wet their tentacles and seasoned scientists questioned the very concept of habitability. As the shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, Zyx'nax's 4 hearts beat a frantic rhythm against his exoskeleton. He'd done his research, of course. Hours upon hours of poring over xenobiology texts, survival guides, and the occasional human action movie which he was fairly certain was some form of horror propaganda. But no amount of studying could have prepared him for the sheer ordinariness of his human guide. "Sup, dude. I'm Jake, welcome to Earth." The creature Jake extended a limb in what Zyx'nax recognized as a handshake hesitantly. He reached out with his own appendage, half expecting the human's touch to sear his carapace. To his surprise, it was just warm and slightly damp. I am Zyx'nax of the Glorblax Nebula," he responded, trying to keep the tremor out of his voice. I am honored to be here on your fascinating world." Jake grinned, revealing a row of blunt teeth that Zyx'nax knew could tear through flesh and bone with terrifying efficiency. "Awesome. Let's grab your bags and head to the dorm. You're gonna love it here." As they made their way through the spaceport, Zyx'nax couldn't help but marvel at the casual way Jake navigated the throngs of humans. Didn't he realize they were surrounded by apex predators? One wrong move, and any of these bipedal terrors could. "Oh man, I'm starving," Jake announced, interrupting Zyx'nax's increasingly paranoid train of thought. "You want to grab a burger?" Zyx'nax's translator glitched for a moment. "A burger," he repeated cautiously. Jake laughed, a sound that sent shivers down all 3 of Zyx'nax's spinal columns. "Yeah, you know, meat, patty, bun, veggies, classic Earth food. Come on, I know a great place." Before Zyx'nax could protest, Jake was dragging him towards a garishly colored establishment. The smell hit him like a photon torpedo, a mix of charred flesh, processed carbohydrates, and something vaguely chemical. 2 double cheeseburgers, large fries, and a couple of sodas Jake ordered cheerfully. He turned to Zyx'nax. "Trust me, you'll love it." Zyx'nax stared at the tray of sustenance placed before him. The burger sat there, oozing various fluids, while the fries looked suspiciously like some sort of deep-fried fungal growth. And the soda, it fizzed and popped in a way that suggested barely contained nuclear fusion. Jake, oblivious to his companion's distress, took an enormous bite of his burger. Mimmed so good he mumbled through a mouthful of partially masticated cow flesh. "Go on, try it." With trembling appendages, Zyx'nax lifted the burger to his mouth orifice. He took the smallest bite possible, certain that this would be the end of his brief sojourn on Earth. To his amazement, it was not terrible. In fact, it was rather pleasant, in a "I can feel my arteries hardening as we speak" kind of way. "See?" told Jake, grinned, wiping grease from his chin. "Nothing beats a good burger. Well, except maybe pizza. Or tacos. Or you know what, we've got a whole semester to introduce you to Earth cuisine." As they made their way to the university campus, Zyx'nax found himself torn between fascination and terror. Every step revealed new potential dangers, screeching metal contraptions hurtling down roads, microscopic organisms lurking on every surface, and the ever-present threat of Earth's volatile weather patterns. "So what's your major?" Jake asked, casually dodging a group of humans on self-propelled 2-wheeled death traps. "Xenobiology," Zyx'nax replied, his eye stalk swiveling wildly to track all possible threats, with a focus on extreme environment adaptations. Jake snorted. "Dude, you came to the right place. Earth's basically one big extreme environment. Hey, watch out for that." But it was too late. Zyx'nax, distracted by a particularly ominous-looking cloud formation, walked face first into a low-hanging tree branch. He reeled back, certain that he'd been attacked by some sort of carnivorous plant life. "Branch," Jake finished lamely, trying and failing to suppress a laugh. "You okay there, buddy?" Zyx'nax chittered in embarrassment, his chromatophores flashing a mortified puce. I am unharmed." But surely such aggressive flora should be contained. What if it had been a less durable species? Jake's laughter redoubled. "Oh man, wait until you see the poison ivy on the nature trail. But seriously, you've got to relax. Earth's not out to get you." As if on cue, a bolt of lightning split the sky, followed by a thunderous boom that shook Zyx'nax to his core. Rain began to pour from the heavens, each droplet feeling like a tiny missile against his exoskeleton. "Okay, maybe the weather is out to get you," Jake conceded, still chuckling. "Come on, let's make a run for the dorm." "Run," Zyx'nax squeaked, in this acid deluge. But Jake was already sprinting ahead, letting out a whoop of joy as he splashed through rapidly forming puddles. Zyx'nax, certain that he was about to be dissolved by Earth's corrosive precipitation, had no choice but to follow. They burst into the dormitory lobby, Jake shaking water from his hair like some kind of primitive mammal, while Zyx'nax huddled in abject terror. That was Zyx'nax struggled to find words to describe the sheer horror of the experience. "Awesome. Right, Jake finished for him, grinning from ear to ear. Nothing like a good thunderstorm to get the blood pumping. Zyx'nax stared at his human guide in disbelief. Was this some sort of elaborate test? A psychological experiment to see how much stress an alien exchange student could endure before suffering a complete nervous breakdown? As they made their way to their shared room, because of course the universe hadn't finished torturing Zyx'nax yet, Jake kept up a steady stream of chatter. So, we've got a pretty cool setup here. Bunk beds, mini fridge, decent Wi-Fi, and don't worry about the occasional blackouts. The backup generator usually kicks in before anything too interesting escapes from the biolabs. Zyx'nax froze mid-step. Escapes? From the biolabs? Jake waved a hand dismissively. Nah, I'm just messing with you. Probably he winked. A gesture that Zyx'nax's research had indicated could mean anything from friendly camaraderie to impending betrayal. Their room, when they finally reached it, was a monument to organized chaos. One half, presumably Jake's, looked like it had been hit by a localized matter-antimatter explosion. The other half was pristine, sterile, and utterly terrifying in its potential for contamination. Home sweet home, Jake announced, flopping onto his bed with enough force to make the entire frame creak ominously. Feel free to settle in. Oh, and you might want to pick a top 5 list of Earth foods you want to try. My mom's visiting this weekend, and she always brings enough grub to feed a small army. Zyx'nax carefully placed his luggage on his side of the room, trying to touch as little of the alien environment as possible. Your maternal unit is visiting? Is that safe? Jake propped himself up on one elbow, raising an eyebrow. Safe? Dude, it's my mom, not a xenomorph. Although he paused, a mischievous glint in his eye. Her hugs can be pretty lethal if you're not prepared. Before Zyx'nax could inquire about the apparently deadly nature of human maternal affection, a series of loud bangs echoed through the hallway. He instinctively dropped to the floor, certain that some sort of firefight had broken out. Jake, meanwhile, just rolled his eyes. "Oh, freshman," he muttered. "Looks like someone discovered the joys of mixing Mentos and Diet Coke again." Zyx'nax cautiously uncurled from his defensive ball. That wasn't weapons fire. Nah, just good old-fashioned human stupidity, Jake replied with a grin. Although, remind me to show you the chemistry department's annual thermit demonstration. Now that's a real explosion. As the day wore on, Zyx'nax found himself oscillating between abject terror and reluctant fascination. Jake, seemingly oblivious to the myriad dangers that surrounded them at every turn, took it upon himself to give his alien roommate a crash course in Earth life. "Okay, so here's the deal with Earth sports," Jake explained as they walked across the campus quad. "Football is like ritualized warfare, baseball is what we do when we're too lazy for warfare, and hockey is just straight-up gladiatorial combat on ice." Zyx'nax's eye stalks swiveled in confusion. But why? Surely such violent pastimes serve no evolutionary purpose. Jake laughed, slapping Zyx'nax on what passed for his shoulder. The alien flinched, half expecting his exoskeleton to crack under the casual display of human strength. Purpose? Who needs purpose when you've got beer, nachos, and the primal joy of watching grown men give each other concussions? As if to punctuate Jake's point, a misthrown frisbee whizzed past Zyx'nax's head, missing him by millimeters. The alien ducked, certain he was under attack, while Jake simply reached up and snagged the disc out of the air. "Nice try," Kevin Jake called out, tossing the frisbee back to a group of humans engaged in what appeared to be some sort of circuit of circular aerodynamic warfare. "Work on that backhand." Zyx'nax straightened up, his chromatophores flashing a distressed mauve. How do you remain so calm? That projectile could have caused serious cranial trauma." Jake snorted. "Dude, it's a frisbee, not a heat-seeking missile." Although he paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "That does give me an idea for my next engineering project. Heat-seeking frisbees. Nah, probably violates some boring safety regulation." As they continued their tour, Zyx'nax found himself cataloging an ever-growing list of potential hazards. The trees, with their tendency to drop seeds, leaves, and entire branches without warning. The squirrels, small but clearly vicious mammals that seem to regard the entire campus as their personal domain. And let's not even get started on the geese. Honk, a large white bird announced its presence, neck extended in what Zyx'nax could only interpret as a battle cry. "Oh shit," Jake muttered, quickly changing course. "Yeah, we don't mess with the geese. They're like the mafia of the bird world, but with more attitude and sharper beaks." Zyx'nax scuttled after his human guide, keeping all 4 eyes on the avian menace. "Are they venomous? Carriers of some horrific plague? Why does your educational institution allow such creatures to roam freely?" Jake chuckled, a sound that Zyx'nax was beginning to associate with impending doom. "Nah, they're just assholes. But they've been here longer than us, so we've reached a sort of detente. They pretend not to plot our demise, and we pretend not to notice when they chase freshmen across the quad." As if to demonstrate, a group of young humans came tearing across the grass, pursued by a onking, flapping mass of feathers in righteous anger. "Ah, nature," Jake sighed contentedly. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Zyx'nax, who came from a planet where the most dangerous fauna was a mildly acidic form of sentient moss, could only stare in horror. Their tour eventually led them to the university's main library, a towering structure that Zyx'nax initially mistook for some sort of fortification. And this, Jake announced with a flourish, is where dreams go to die and caffeine addictions are born. Welcome to the library. As they entered the building, Zyx'nax was immediately struck by the oppressive silence. Hundreds of humans sat hunched over data terminals or ancient paper information storage devices, their faces masks of concentration or despair. Why do they look so? Pained, Zyx'nax whispered, afraid to disturb whatever eldritch ritual was taking place. Jake grinned, leading them past rows of shelves laden with what had to be forbidden, possibly cursed tomes. That, my friend, is the look of students realizing they have a 10-page paper due tomorrow, and they haven't started yet. It's a time-honored tradition. They passed a group of humans huddled around a table, surrounded by empty containers of what Zyx'nax recognized as caffeinated beverages. One of them looked up, eyes wild and unfocused. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, the human muttered frantically. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, the mitoch. And we're just going to keep moving, Jake said quickly, steering Zyx'nax away from the group. Biofinals tend to break people. It's best not to make eye contact. As they ascended to the upper floors of the library, Zyx'nax couldn't shake the feeling that they were entering increasingly dangerous territory. The air grew thinner, the lighting dimmer, and the humans, well, they looked less and less like the carefree creatures he'd seen outside. Jake Zyx'nax chittered nervously. I believe we may have stumbled into some sort of gladiatorial arena. Should we not retreat? Jake laughed, a sound that echoed far too loudly in the hushed environment. Several nearby humans turned to glare at them with bloodshot eyes. Nah. This is just the law library. Although you're not entirely wrong about the gladiatorial thing. I've seen future lawyers actually draw blood over the last copy of a casebook. They quickly beat a hasty retreat from the law library, Jake muttering something about not being covered by his health insurance for lawyer-induced injuries. As they exited the library, blinking in the suddenly bright sunlight, Jake clapped Zyx'nax on what passed for his shoulder. So what do you think of Earth so far? Pretty exciting. Huh. Zyx'nax's chromatophore cycled through a dizzying array of colors as he struggled to find the right words. It's awesome, amazing, a non-stop thrill ride, Jake supplied helpfully. Terrifying, Zyx'nax finally managed. Utterly, incomprehensibly terrifying. How do you survive here? Jake's grin, if possible, grew even wider. That's the best part, buddy. We don't just survive, we thrive. Now, come on. I think it's time we introduced you to another Earth tradition. The all-you-can-eat buffet. Trust me, it's only slightly less dangerous than the library during finals week. As they made their way towards what Jake promised would be a culinary adventure your stomachs will never forget, Zyx'nax wasn't sure if that was a threat or a promise. The alien found himself reflecting on the sheer absurdity of his situation. Here he was, on a planet that by all rights should be completely uninhabitable, surrounded by creatures that seemed to actively seek out danger, and he was, enjoying himself. The realization hit him like a poorly thrown frisbee to the head. Jake Zyx'nax began, his voice a mixture of awe and incredulity. I believe I'm beginning to understand why your species is classified as Deathworlders. Jake raised an eyebrow, a gesture Zyx'nax had come to interpret as either curiosity or the prelude to another terrible joke. Oh yeah, and why's that, buddy? It's not just your physical resilience or your planet's hostile environment, Zyx'nax explained, his chromatophores pulsing with newfound excitement. It's your attitude. You don't just endure these conditions, you seem to revel in them. Jake's face split into a grin that would have sent lesser beings scurrying for cover. Now you're getting it. Life's too short to play it safe all the time. Sometimes you've got to look danger in the eye and say, is that all you've got? He paused, considering. Although maybe don't try that with the geese or Professor Hendrickson during midterms. As they approached the all-you-can-eat buffet, a new wave of sensory input assaulted Zyx'nax's highly tuned receptors. The smell of sizzling meat, the sound of food bubbling in deep fryers, and the sight of humans piling plates high with an improbable assortment of edibles. It was simultaneously horrifying and fascinating. Welcome to Food Nirvana, Jake announced, spreading his arms wide as they entered the establishment, where culinary dreams come true and diets go to die. Zyx'nax eyed the steam tables warily. Are you certain this is safe for consumption? The variety of substances seems excessive. Jake laughed, already grabbing a plate. Safe, probably not. Delicious. Absolutely. Come on, live a little. Or a lot, depending on how much you can fit on your plate. With trepidation, Zyx'nax followed Jake's lead, cautiously selecting items that didn't appear to be actively trying to escape the serving trays. He watched in amazement as Jake piled his plate with a mountain of food that defied both gravity and common sense. Jake Zyx'nax chittered nervously. I believe your ocular receptors may be larger than your gastric capabilities. Jake paused in his culinary construction to shoot Zyx'nax a bemused look. You mean my eyes are bigger than my stomach? Nah, that's just a challenge to be overcome. Watch and learn, my alien friend. Watch and learn. As they settled into a booth, Zyx'nax couldn't help but marvel at the sheer variety of foods humans had managed to create. Some items were recognizable as plant or animal matter, while others seemed to defy classification entirely. What is this?" Zyx'nax asked, poking at a wobbly fluorescent cube on his plate. Jake glanced up from his own mountain of food. "Oh, that's Jell-O. It's like, imagine if you could eat a rainbow that had been liquefied, then solidified again, but it still jiggles." Zyx'nax's eye stalk swiveled in confusion. "But why?" "Why not?" Jake shrugged, shoveling a forkful of something breaded and fried into his mouth. "That's kind of Earth's motto, you know. Why not? Sure, maybe we shouldn't deep fry butter or make pizza with a crust made of chicken, but we did it anyway, because we could." As Zyx'nax cautiously sampled the various items on his plate, he found himself torn between amazement at the flavors and textures, and sheer terror at what these substances might be doing to his internal organs. "I must admit," Zyx'nax said between bites of something Jake had called mac and cheese, "your species' culinary creativity is impressive." "Terrifying, but impressive." Jake beamed, his cheeks bulging with what appeared to be 3 different types of meat. "Thanks," he mumbled, swallowing with an audible gulp. "Just wait until dessert. They've got this thing called chocolate lava cake. It's like, imagine if a volcano erupted, but instead of lava, it was liquid chocolate." Zyx'nax's chromatophores flashed a distressed puce. You eat simulated volcanic eruptions for pleasure." "Hell yeah, we do," Jake exclaimed. "And let me tell you about this other dessert called Baked Alaska. It's ice cream wrapped in cake, covered in meringue, then set on fire. At the table." When Zyx'nax stared at his human companion in horror. "You intentionally ignite your sustenance while it's in front of you." Jake's grin took on a slightly maniacal edge. "Yep, nothing says delicious like a little bit of danger with your dessert. Oh, and wait until I tell you about fugu. That's a fish that's poisonous unless prepared exactly right. One slip of the knife and bam, you're pushing up daisies." "Pushing up daisies," Zyx'nax repeated, his translator struggling with the idiom. "Oh, you know, kicking the bucket, biting the dust, meeting your maker," Jake elaborated unhelpfully. Seeing Zyx'nax's continued confusion, he sighed. "It means dying. But don't worry, fugu chefs train for years to prepare it safely, usually." As they continued their meal, Zyx'nax found himself oddly exhilarated by the experience. Yes, every bite was a potential threat to his existence, but there was something undeniably thrilling about it all. Was this how humans felt all the time? This constant dance on the edge of disaster, spiced with flavor and deep-fried to perfection. "You know," Zyx'nax said thoughtfully, reaching for another slice of pizza, a food item he had quickly become enamored with, despite its structural instability. "I'm beginning to understand why your species has managed to thrive on such a hostile world." Jake paused mid-bite, a string of cheese dangling comically from his chin. "Oh yeah, do tell, Professor Alien." Zyx'nax's chromatophores rippled with amusement at the nickname. "It's your adaptability, what's the term you used earlier? Why not attitude? You don't just survive the challenges your world presents, you turn them into opportunities for enjoyment." Jake nodded sagely, or as sagely as one can with barbecue sauce smeared across their face. "Damn straight. Life's gonna throw curveballs at you no matter what. Might as well learn to hit them out of the park." I don't understand that reference," Zyx'nax admitted. "Baseball metaphor," Jake explained. "I'll teach you the game sometime. It's like warfare, but with more spitting and crotch adjusting." As they finished their meal and waddled out of the restaurant, Zyx'nax felt a strange sense of accomplishment. He had faced the terrifying variety of Earth cuisine and emerged victorious, although he suspected his digestive system might stage a revolt later. "So what's next on our adventure?" Zyx'nax asked, surprising himself with his eagerness. Jake's eyes lit up with a gleam that Zyx'nax was learning to both anticipate and fear. "Well, since we've conquered the culinary world, how about we tackle something a little more physical?" Zyx'nax's antennae twitched nervously. "Physical? You don't mean?" "Yep," Jake exclaimed. "It's time to introduce you to the wonders of Earth sports. Hope you're ready for some good old-fashioned human roughhousing." As they made their way towards the university's sports complex, Zyx'nax couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. He was about to engage in activities that his species scientists had long classified as suicidally reckless and evolutionarily questionable, and yet he found himself looking forward to it. The sports complex loomed before them, a sprawling testament to humanity's love affair with physical exertion and controlled violence. Zyx'nax's eyes darted from the towering rock-climbing wall to the Olympic-sized swimming pool, each new sight more bewildering than the last. "Okay, buddy," Jake said, clapping Zyx'nax on the back and nearly sending the alien sprawling. "What's your poison? We've got everything from badminton to mixed martial arts. Although maybe we should start with something a little less bone crunchy for your first time." Zyx'nax's chromatophores flashed a distressed lavender. "Poison? Bone crunchy? Jake, I thought we were here for recreational activities, not gladiatorial combat." Jake laughed, a sound that still sent shivers down Zyx'nax's spinal columns. "It's just an expression, dude. Although now that you mention it, some of these sports aren't too far off from gladiatorial combat. Ever seen a hockey fight? Before Zyx'nax could inquire about the apparently violent nature of frozen water sports, Jake was already steering him towards a large, open room filled with various types of equipment. Let's start with something basic, Jake suggested, picking up a small white ball. How about a little ping pong? Zyx'nax eyed the ball suspiciously. Ping pong? Is this some sort of explosive device? Jake snorted. Nah, it's just table tennis. See that table over there? We hit this ball back and forth over the net. It's like regular tennis, but with less running and a much lower chance of heat stroke. As Jake began to explain the rules, Zyx'nax found himself oddly intrigued. The concept seemed simple enough. Use the small paddle to hit the ball over the net, preventing your opponent from returning it. It was almost elegant in its simplicity. That elegance lasted approximately 30 seconds into their first game. Jake shouted as he whacked the ball with what Zyx'nax could only describe as unnecessary enthusiasm. The alien ducked, certain he was about to be decapitated by the tiny projectile. The ball whizzed over his head, ricocheted off a wall, bounced across 3 other tables, and somehow ended up in the water fountain. Oops, Jake said, not looking particularly apologetic. Guess I don't know my own strength. You okay there, buddy? Zyx'nax straightened up, his chromatophores cycling through a dizzying array of colors. I believe I now understand why your species engages in these activities. The adrenaline rush is quite invigorating. Jake grinned. Now you're getting it. Nothing like a near-death experience to make you feel alive, right? As they continued their game with Jake making a concerted effort not to send any more balls into low Earth orbit, Zyx'nax found himself actually enjoying the activity. The rhythmic back and forth, the satisfying plink of paddle meeting ball, it was almost meditative. Of course, this moment of zen was shattered when a stray ball from a neighboring table nailed Zyx'nax square in the back of a Zyx. Oh shit, Jake exclaimed, rushing over to his alien friend. You all right? How many appendages am I holding up? Zyx'nax blinked, his vision swimming. I believe I'm experiencing what your species refers to as seeing stars. Fascinating. Terrifying, but fascinating. Jake helped Zyx'nax to a nearby bench, looking equal parts concerned and amused. Welcome to Earth sports, buddy, where even the safest games come with a side of potential concussion. As Zyx'nax's vision cleared, he found himself surrounded by a small crowd of curious humans. Their expressions ranged from concern to barely suppressed laughter. Is it always like this? Zyx'nax asked, rubbing the back of his head. This constant dance with danger, even in your leisure activities? Jake shrugged. Pretty much. I mean, have you seen our idea of extreme sports? We literally jump out of perfectly good airplanes for fun. Zyx'nax's eye stalk swiveled in disbelief. You intentionally exit flying vehicles while they're still airborne. Yep, Jake said, his voice filled with what could only be described as pride. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got people who climb mountains without ropes, swim with sharks, and run ultra-marathons through deserts. Hell, we even have a sport where you chase a wheel of cheese down a dangerously steep hill. Zyx'nax stared at his human friend, trying to determine if this was another example of Earth humor. The earnest expression on Jake's face suggested it wasn't. Your species continues to confound me, Zyx'nax admitted. You possess the intelligence to create incredible technologies, yet you willingly engage in activities that seem designed to end your existence prematurely. Jake's grin widened. That's the beauty of it, my alien amigo. We don't just survive on this death world, we challenge it. We look at a mountain and think, I bet I could climb that. We see a massive wave and think, I could totally surf that. It's not about cheating death. It's about embracing life to its fullest. As Zyx'nax pondered this uniquely human philosophy, Jake's eyes lit up with what the alien was learning to recognize as a dangerously exciting idea. You know what? Ping pong was a bit tame. How about we try something a little more Earth-wide, Jake suggested, his voice filled with barely contained enthusiasm. Zyx'nax's chromatophores flashed a warning yellow. I'm not sure I like the sound of that. What exactly did you have in mind? Jake's grin took on a slightly maniacal edge. How do you feel about roller coasters? And so, less than an hour later, Zyx'nax found himself strapped into a contraption that he was fairly certain violated several laws of physics and at least a dozen safety regulations from his home planet. Are you sure this is safe? Zyx'nax chittered nervously as the roller coaster began its ominous ascent. Jake, seated next to him and practically vibrating with excitement, let out a whoop of joy. Safe? Probably not. Fun? Absolutely. Just remember to keep all appendages inside the ride at all times, and maybe don't blink. You wouldn't want to miss a second of this. As they reached the peak of the first hill, Zyx'nax had a moment of clarity. This, he realized, was the essence of humanity. Not just their ability to survive on a death world, but their insistence on turning that survival into a thrill. They didn't just endure, they celebrated. They took the dangers of their world and turned them into sources of joy and excitement. Then they plummeted down the other side of the hill, and all philosophical musings were replaced by a scream that Zyx'nax was pretty sure could be heard back on his home planet. By the time the ride screeched to a halt, Zyx'nax was a trembling mass of adrenaline and confused emotions. His chromatophores were cycling through colors so rapidly he looked like a malfunctioning neon sign. So Jake asked, his hair wild and a manic grin plastered across his face, "What did you think?" "Pretty awesome, right?" Zyx'nax took a moment to collect himself, allowing his various internal organs to return to their proper positions. That was terrifying, exhilarating, like staring death in the face and then giving it a wedgie. Jake supplied helpfully. "Yes," Zyx'nax said simply. "All of that, and I think I want to do it again." Jake's face lit up like a supernova. "Now you're talking. Welcome to Earth, buddy, where we turn terror into fun and laugh in the face of danger, usually right before it punches us in the gut." As they made their way back to the university campus, Zyx'nax found himself reflecting on the day's events. He had come to Earth expecting a hostile, terrifying world populated by equally terrifying creatures, and in many ways, that's exactly what he had found. But he had also discovered something else, a species that faced that hostility with a grin and a shrug, that turned danger into sport and fear into excitement. "You know, Jake," Zyx'nax said as they walked, his gait still a bit wobbly from the roller coaster experience, "I believe I owe you and your species an apology." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, what for?" "When I first arrived, I thought humans were, well, insane," Zyx'nax admitted. "Your casual approach to the dangers of your world seemed like a form of collective madness. But now I see it differently. It's not madness, it's